What's the scariest thing that has ever happened to you when you were alone? When I was 10, I'd see a dark figure standing in the corner of my room every night before bed. If I turned on the light, it would disappear. If I turned it off, it came back. One night, I got the courage to ask, "Who are you?" The figure started moving toward me. I jumped up, switched the light on, and I've never slept in the dark since. Every night at exactly midnight, the old clock in our house would chime. The only problem was, we'd taken it apart long ago, and the clockwork was gone. One evening, as the chime began, I went up to the clock and heard breathing next to me. After that, we moved out and left the clock for the new owners. There was an old mirror in our attic that I rarely noticed. But one day, passing by, I saw a woman's reflection in it, standing behind me in a long gown with empty eyes. I turned. Nothing was there. That night, I decided to remove the mirror. But as soon as I touched it, it turned ice cold, and her figure flashed again, silently screaming. I ran out and never returned to the attic. One night, as I was lying in bed, almost asleep, my phone suddenly lit up. It was a message from an unknown number. "I'm right behind you." The room was empty, but I was too scared to even look back. Since then, I double-check that my door is locked every night, and every sound makes my heart skip. I was alone late at night, reading a book, when suddenly I heard someone whisper my name. No one was there. I figured it was my imagination, but then I heard it again, louder and closer. I stayed awake all night, expecting someone to appear from the shadows. One summer break, my friends and I went to an old hotel none of us had visited before. There was a legend about a woman who never left her room. Every night, I heard knocking from the room next door, as if someone was trying to get out. On the fourth night, I couldn't take it anymore and went to check. The room was locked and the plaque on the door read, "Closed since 1958. The next morning, we packed up and left early. Once, I got a call in the middle of the night from a stranger who whispered, "Don't turn around." Naturally, I turned around. No one was there. But since that night, I sometimes still hear the voice, even when the phone is silent. Every morning, I notice the same time on my clock, 3:33 a.m., as if time had stopped. In those moments, I hear a light tapping on the wall. When I moved to a new place, it stopped for a while, but one night I woke up at 3:33 a.m. to the same tapping. It's like time wants to tell me something, but what? When I was a child, I used to play in a house that was said to be cursed. One day, I ran into one of the old rooms and saw a girl sitting by the window. She was wearing white, with long hair. As I approached her, she turned to face me and I froze in fear. She simply said, "You shouldn't be here." I ran out of the house and never went into that room again. One evening, when I was home alone, I noticed a dark figure standing in the hallway, perfectly still. I thought it was someone from my family, but as I walked closer, the figure disappeared. Since that day, I constantly feel like someone is watching me, especially in the dark. It hasn't stopped. When I bought an old jewelry box at a market, I was told it had a strange history. On the first night I opened it, I heard whispering. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but every time I opened it after that, the whispers grew louder. Eventually, I had to get rid of the box, but it felt like the whispers followed me. There's an old house near my childhood home, and every time I pass it, I can see someone standing behind the window watching. The house has been abandoned for years, and when I tried to investigate, the windows were completely boarded up. But I still feel like someone is inside, staring out at me. I was walking home late one night when I noticed a man standing at the end of the street, staring at me. As I walked closer, I saw that he had no eyes. I quickly turned around to walk in the other direction, but when I looked back, he was gone. It felt like he was never really there, but the image of him stuck with me. When I moved into my new apartment, everything seemed fine until I started hearing strange sounds coming from the walls at night. It was like something was crawling inside them. I tried to ignore it, but one night I decided to check. I found nothing, but the noise continued every night. After a few months, I moved out, but the sounds never stopped. I was driving through the countryside late at night when I saw a bright red light in the distance. Thinking it was a car, I drove towards it, but the light didn't move. As I got closer, the light just disappeared, and I was left in the pitch black. I never figured out what that light was, but I've never driven that route again. I used to live in a small town, and every night I would look out my bedroom window and see a man standing across the street, staring up at my house. He was always in the same spot, just watching. I never told anyone because I thought I was just imagining things, but one night I saw him in my yard. That's when I moved away. One night, I woke up to hear someone whispering my name, so softly that I thought it was a dream. The next night, I heard it again, but this time it sounded much closer. I turned on the light and looked around, but no one was there. The whispers continued every night after that, and I could never figure out where they came from. In my old house, my dog would often bark at a specific corner of the room. At first, I thought it was just him being a dog, but one day I decided to look into it. I found nothing, but I began to feel a strange presence whenever I stood in that corner. It felt like something was watching me. After a while, the feeling faded, but it still bothers me to think about it. I've always had an odd feeling about long hallways. One day, when I was walking down the hallway of my childhood home, I felt like I wasn't alone. I looked down the hall, and at the far end, I saw a figure standing there facing away from me. I called out to it, but it never turned around. I ran down the hall to check, but the hallway was empty. I've never been able to walk down a long hallway without feeling like I'm being watched. In my office, the lights would flicker every time I stayed late. It started with small flickers, but eventually the lights would completely turn off and on by themselves. One night, when I was the only one left, the lights went off completely. I heard footsteps and turned around to find an empty room. The flickering stopped after that, but I still don't stay late anymore.